right, we're diving into something pretty tasty today. Lemon garlic butter swai-fish recipe. We got a whole request for a deep dive into this dish, and honestly, yeah, I'm ready to unpack why this recipe is making waves.
It is interesting, It takes swai, a fish that doesn't always get a lot of love, and really makes it shine.
I get that swai isn't usually the first fish I think of when I'm, planning a fancy meal. So what makes it such a good pick for this particular dish?
Well, in terms of flavor, swai is sort of a blank canvas. It's mild, flaky, and it really soaks up the flavors you cook it with. So in this case, that bright, lemon garlic butter sauce is really the star. It takes that simple fish and turns it into something, well, special.
It's not just about the sauce itself then, it's about the way it works with the swai.
Exactly. And this recipe really nails that. But before we get too deep into the sauce, maybe we should talk a bit more about swai in general. It's definitely budget friendly, which is always a plus, and it's a good source of protein. But there are some things to think about when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things about how swai is formed.
There have been, some concerns about certain farming practices in some regions. So if you're looking for sustainable seafood, it's a good idea to look for swai that's certified by organizations like the Aquaculture Stewardship Council, or ASC for short. They have, standards to make sure the farming is responsible and minimizes the impact on the environment.
Good to know. So we can enjoy this recipe, but still be smart about our choices.
Absolutely. And of course, you could always substitute other whitefish if you want to. Cod, haddock, even tilapia would work with this sauce. They'll have slightly different textures and flavors, but, they'd still be delicious.
Okay, I'm definitely keeping that in mind. So you were saying the sauce is what really makes this dish sing.
Mm.
The recipe we're looking at uses melted butter, minced garlic, fresh lemon juice and zest, paprika, parsley, salt, and pepper. Seems pretty simple, but is there a reason those flavors work so well with fish?
There's a real kind of magic that happens when you combine those ingredients. You have that richness from the butter, which works so well with the delicate fish. Then the garlic adds a savory punch, but really the lemon is what makes it special. It brightens everything up with that acidity, cuts through the richness of that butter, plus it actually reacts with the fish to help, get rid of any fishy smells.
It's like science and deliciousness all rolled into one.
Right.
The recipe is really specific about patting the fish dry before you add the sauce. Why is that so important?
Well, think of it this way. If you want crispy fish, moisture is the enemy. When you pat it dry, you're making sure the sauce sticks to the fish properly. That's what gives you that beautiful crust when it bakes. If the fish is soggy, it won't brown as well, and you lose that textural contrast.
Okay, that makes sense. I can practically picture that golden brown crust already. So what happens next?
The recipe says to bake it on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Parchment paper is a lifesaver when it comes to cleaning up. It stops the fish from sticking, so you can just slide those perfectly cooked fillets right onto your plate.
Definitely a bonus in my book.
Mm.
And the recipe says the baking time is only 12 to 15 minutes. That seems really fast for fish.
Swai cooks really quickly and evenly, but you do want to keep an eye on it, It's done when it's opaque and flakes easily with a fork. Or, if you want to be super precise, aim for an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's great that this recipe is both flavorful and convenient. The finishing touch is a little extra sauce drizzled on top, plus some lemon slices and fresh parsley for garnish. Presentation is key, right? But what about sides? What goes well with lemon garlic butter swai-fish?
Well, the podcast episode we're looking at suggests steamed veggies like broccoli or asparagus. They'd add a nice texture and a bit of freshness. Or a crisp salad would lighten things up. And if you want something a little more filling, you could do garlic mashed potatoes or even quinoa.
Lots of options then, whether you're looking for something light or a bigger meal. I am curious, though.
Yeah.
This recipe seems like a great starting point, but I'm wondering about variations. The podcast host mentioned things like Parmesan cheese or swapping the paprika for Cajun seasoning. What do you think about customizing this dish?
I think it's awesome to make a recipe your own. This lemon garlic butter swai-fish is a great base, but don't be afraid to experiment a little. Parmesan would add a nice nutty, salty flavor. And Cajun seasoning would definitely bring the heat if you're into that. You could even try different herbs like maybe dill or tarragon.
Dill and lemon with fish, that's a classic combination. I'm getting hungry just thinking about all the possibilities, but before we get too carried away, we still have a lot more to explore with this recipe.
We do. We've only scratched the surface of what makes this dish so appealing. We'll be back in a bit to continue our deep dive into this lemon garlic butter swai-fish. Welcome back to our deep dive into this lemon garlic butter swai fish. We've talked about the swai itself and that awesome lemon garlic butter sauce, but what else makes this recipe so, I don't know, appealing?
Well, the podcast we're looking at is really big on how convenient this recipe is, and I have to agree. It's ready in like 25 minutes, which is amazing for those busy weeknights when you just, you know, want dinner on the table fast.
Right. It shows you don't need hours to make a delicious home-cooked meal. And it's not even just the speed, it's how simple it is to actually, like, make.
Totally. You're using ingredients most people already have: butter, garlic, lemons, spices. No need to go on a special grocery run.
That accessibility is so important. And speaking of accessible, remember we talked about how affordable swai is? This recipe lets you have, like a fancy restaurant-style seafood meal without spending a fortune.
Yeah, it's nice to be reminded that you don't need expensive ingredients to make something really tasty. And we can't forget that it's also a pretty healthy option. Only 2 grams of carbs per serving, so it fits into a low-carb way of eating really well.
Absolutely. It proves that flavor and health aren't, mutually exclusive. You can have both.
So we've got quick, easy, healthy, affordable, and of course delicious. But what I find really interesting is how much the podcast emphasizes customizing the recipe.
Yeah, the host really wants people to, get creative and make it their own.
Whether that's adding some Parmesan, swapping the paprika for something spicier like Cajun seasoning, or playing around with different herbs and spices, there's so much you can do.
It's all about, embracing your inner chef and experimenting a little.
You know what? This is more than just a recipe, right? It's like a whole philosophy of cooking.
I like that. It's about giving people the tools and the confidence to cook delicious, healthy food at home.
Exactly. It's showing people that anyone can cook and that it can be fun and rewarding.
Speaking of rewarding, before we finish up this part of our deep dive, I wanted to mention the call to action in the podcast. The host encourages listeners to visit their website and share, well, what they've cooked up.
It's not just a website plug, though, is it?
No, it's about creating a community. Connecting with other people who love food and being part of a conversation about cooking.
It's about sharing that passion and inspiring each other.
Exactly. And that's a big part of food culture these days, right? It's not just what you eat, but how you connect with others through food, sharing recipes, tips, stories, and building relationships around food.
So it all circles back to that sense of community. And it all starts with something as simple as a delicious recipe, like this lemon garlic butter swai fish.
It's not just about the food, it's about connecting with people, being creative, and feeling empowered in the kitchen.
Well said. Are we ready to wrap up our deep dive into this recipe, or is there anything else we need to cover?
Almost. We've talked about the recipe, the ingredients, how to make it, the health benefits, affordability, sustainability, customizing it, the community aspect. But we're forgetting one crucial thing.
What's that?
The garnish. The finishing touch.
Oh, right. Can't forget about those lemon slices and the fresh parsley.
They might seem like small details, but they really do make a difference. They make the dish look more appealing and add a burst of freshness.
It's like the final touch on a painting, It elevates the whole dish.
It's all about attention to detail, and that's what makes this lemon garlic butter swai fish recipe so special. It reminds us that even the little things can make a big difference.
I think we've officially covered every single aspect of this recipe, from the fish to the garnish. This has been a really delicious deep dive.
It has. And now I kind of want to go make this myself.
Me too. Let's head to the kitchen and whip up some lemon garlic butter swai fish. We'll be right back to wrap things up, so stick around. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've done more than just break down this lemon garlic butter swai fish recipe, haven't we? It feels like we've explored a whole new way of thinking about food.
Yeah, it's gone way beyond just the ingredients and the steps. We've talked about responsible sourcing, what flavors go well together, the fun of trying new things, and how food can bring people together.
It's been a really interesting conversation. So what does it all mean for our listeners? What are the key takeaways they can use in their own kitchens?
I think the biggest one is that you don't have to be intimidated by cooking. Making delicious and healthy food at home is totally doable. This recipe is proof that you can take simple ingredients and turn them into something amazing.
It's about making cooking less mysterious and giving everyone the confidence to, play with flavors and try new things. If we can make swai this delicious, imagine what you could do with other ingredients.
Right. And this episode has also shown us how important it is to be thoughtful about the choices we make, especially when it comes to seafood. We can still enjoy our favorite dishes, but we can also think about sustainability and responsible sourcing.
Absolutely. And one last thing. Remember that cooking isn't something you have to do alone. It's a great way to connect with other people, to share what you love, and learn from each other. Whether you're trying a new recipe from a friend, sharing tips online, or just having dinner with family and friends, food brings people together.
So go out there, explore your love of cooking, and don't be afraid to get creative in the kitchen, and we'd love to hear about it.
Yes, share your culinary creations with us on social media or visit our blog at www.forkandfry.com for more delicious recipes and cooking tips. Until next time, happy cooking!